Hello and welcome to another episode of the Growing Pains podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Jon Andrew, the co-founder of Arahi, where we'll be talking about the changing boardroom habits of a generation. Jon has worked in this area for a very long time and is very well qualified, I would say, to talk about the things that he keeps seeing coming up as themes. A very warm welcome to the podcast, Jon.
Thank you, Harry. Lovely to be here.
If you could just brighten up a slightly grey December day for us by talking us through kind of your journey to date and what brought you to this point and what really then was the motivation for Arahi being founded.
Okay. It began a long time ago. I originally, I've got a science degree from Durham, which sadly I didn't use. Became a chartered accountant with PwC, and on qualifying a long time ago, my first love was training, and at the time, PwC put a lot of emphasis into training. So I learnt the skills of presenting the old-fashioned way before PowerPoint, good old acetates on overhead projectors, and then I went into course design, and then I learned how to facilitate, all under the guise of helping internal training at PwC in the audit practice and then in the transaction services practice around the time when due diligence was really taking off and the growth of transaction services started. I've gone back to that with Arahi, which I'll come back to, but that has really stood me in good stead. Around the turn of 2000, I started doing transformational change programs on mergers and acquisitions, what people would now call integration program office, or even chief of staff type roles, the integration director to chief execs of our audit clients who were acquiring. And then someone had the bright idea that those techniques of transformational change, merger and acquisitions, you could apply to businesses backed by private capital, largely PE at the time. And I have to say, my first response was, well, don't be silly. What's changed? It's just an investment vehicle. I know how right I was. And so I got into doing that, having spent some time doing pre-deal due diligence. And one client came to us and said, it was Lloyd's Development Capital, LDC, can you help with a management team by translating all the things that you've recommended in the due diligence into a plan? And that actually, 2002, was the first value creation plan that was crafted. But it wasn't called that. It was actually called 100-day planning. And we really sort of made it up on the spot, a little bit of using these techniques in M&A integrations. And I spent 7 weeks with a management team based in Liverpool, working with them, crafting a plan. And since then, that's become my go-to. That was using my facilitation techniques, because it ultimately was getting a management team in a room and say, okay, you've got a model, you've got an ambition over the next 4 or 5 years to get a return for you and for LDC. What are you going to do about it? And been making it on the spot. But some of it actually hasn't changed in those 25 years. It's evolved a little bit. But having done that one, I added it up the other day, I've done 141 of them, and it has just become something that I've become very, very passionate about. I did a lot for a number of different PE houses in the mid-market. And then in 2005, LDC tapped me on the shoulder and said, come in to us and do it for our portfolio. LDC, as you might know, the private equity arm of Lloyd's, was quite a volume house, still is. So it had over 70 portfolio companies. So it justified bringing that in. And it was at the time when value creation was starting to become something that PE was embracing. And so I founded within LDC a value enhancement group that was this bunch of expert consultants, advisors on how to turn a plan in an Excel spreadsheet into an actual focus post-deal. And having done that for a while in LDC, I went on to do other roles. I became COO of LDC 2 weeks after Lehman's, which two weeks before Lehman's. They say timing is everything. At the time when everything stopped. and I ended up doing a number of roles in the portfolio. And then in 2014, joined Inflection, and again, driving value creation. But this is where the genesis of the kernels of Arahi started. Was I started to get into portfolio reporting and looking at how a PE house can use data and insight to get a helicopter view of performance, and how you should then apply resources and focus and emphasis either to catch a falling knife where a management team or a business might be underperforming against an investment case, or drive further investment because it's knocking it out the park. And so that I started to crawl all over data, and I put a portfolio management system in at the time and started reporting, creating dashboards and things like that. And then this sort of marriage of reviewing data on a monthly basis of performance of portfolio and value creation started to coalesce. Well, how do you drive those in an individual investment with insight and the right data, and link that to also delivery of the value creation plan that you need to do to drive transformational growth? And in the course of that, I was helping a management team with actually an integration plan. And I'd come across via a colleague in my LDC days who'd gone on to work in a business that provided software to drive transformational change, a software called OrgView, and loved it. This was a way of driving transformational change by looking at the organization side by side, the acquiring business and the business to be acquired, and moving it around and driving synergies and organizational shape in the new organization. And I got introduced to the founder of OrgView, Rupert Morrison, by this colleague, and we went for a drink. If you know it, I don't know whether you know, there's a nice pub in just off Cheapside called the Pavilion End, and it's got a cricket theme, and there's always cricket on, which is another one of my first loves. And my colleague Bill went to the bar to buy us a drink, and then came back and found Rupert and I riffing about board reporting. And that was the first time we'd met. Bill saw what was going on and actually said, "I'm going to leave you guys to it because you were going for it." And the story goes that we went into the night, well into the night, talking about this, and the theme that there's got to be a better way, that board dysfunction was everywhere, that people were frustrated with the content, the length, the time it takes to produce a board pack, the insight that you get, the fact that often what was discussed at the board bore no resemblance to the issues. It was a sort of turning the pages of a board pack. They were 4 or 5 hours long. The management felt that they were just having their homework marked, and investors felt that they were not getting the progress that they wanted. And everybody talked about it. And I started to build in my head at what a good board pack looked like. And Rupert, as CEO, backed by private equity, had found that no one was giving him support and insight of what a good board pack should look like. And he had started to craft it. Well, this was just a meeting of minds. And we felt there was got to be a better way. I subsequently tried to get Inflection to back Rupert in a fundraising, and sadly failed. The business is now doing fantastically well, and that's my bad. We didn't manage to do it, but we kept on the relationship. And then COVID happened, and I left Inflection and had started advising PE houses on value creation strategies. I'd started doing value creation plans for a number of management teams backed by a range of PE houses. I'd taken 2 chair roles, 1 executive chair. And I was starting to put some of this into practice and road test it myself. I was trying to drive better insight as a board. During my days at Inflection and LDC, I'd witnessed some really good things that happened to the board, but quite a lot of dysfunctional things that had happened. And I was trying to form in my own mind how do you make it better? And then I got a call from Rupert, May 21, and I looked at it, and I didn't take the call. I sort of pressed, "Can I call you later?" And then I added, "Got to get a board pack out." And I was in the middle of writing the board pack with the CEO that I was chair of this business backed by P. So I rang him on the way home, and he said, "Look, I'm coming out of this business. I think there's something here. Do you want to do it?" And I said, without hesitation, yes. Um, and that was how Arahi was born. Arahi is Maori, it means to lead or to guide. My co-founder Rupert has got a New Zealand heritage, and we coalesced around the book Legacy. I don't know whether you know the book. It's a book by Richard Kerr that talks about high performing culture in the All Blacks, and it's a wonderful book about culture and language and how do you create a high performing team. And we sort of coalesced around that as what we wanted to create. And we sat down and said, "Do you know what? There's got to be a better way. Can we change the boardroom habits of a generation? Can we make the production of the board pack seamless, the insight that you get from data-driven discussions better? Can you make the decision-making more focused, the agenda more tight? Can you make it more action-driven such that things that come out of the board don't sit gathering digital dust in a PDF? There is that call to action and follow-up to address these pain points that both I had seen in portfolios and as chair, and hadn't really succeeded as much as I wanted. And Rupert has seen it as CEO of his business. So that's how it started. And in November 21, we set up Arahi. And if you asked me at the age of, that I would start setting up a business in my early 50s, I would have said you're mad. But it's felt like that my value creation journey, my journey in PwC and Inflection and LDC brought me to this. This is ultimately the best of both worlds. I spend time facilitating workshops with management to craft a value creation plan and then help them with the move into board reporting to link strategy into the board pack, and focusing on helping PE houses with their portfolio reporting so they get insight, and that there is a match between what the portfolio guys are reviewing at the PE house and what the board is discussing in the actual management team boards, and those two were often detached. So I sort of feel that it's a long-winded answer, Harry, but I feel I was born to do this, and it's been a rejuvenation. I've loved every minute of it.
Fantastic. And as much as I'd love to dive into your love of cricket, I feel like with the status,
Let's not talk about the Ashes. It's a bit painful right now.
Completely to one side. As your journey has progressed, you've kind of gone through from the dynamics in the boardroom to applying data to that. How do you find, looking backwards on it, I guess, but obviously you combine them together now, what difference has it made bringing greater data in to the dynamic at play at boardroom level?
Well, I think it's a very interesting question, because I think ultimately, if you look over the last 5 years, 10, there has been this thirst for more data-driven decision making. And if you look at due diligence now, it is the scrutiny, the content that goes in data rooms. It's immense. PE investors, VC investors have a thirst for data, but they don't often know, it doesn't often lead to the right things. So the first part of the challenge on this, excuse me, is getting the right data. And that's something that I think if we look back 4 years ago, we probably underestimated that. We were probably making assumptions that businesses backed by PE, even though we'd seen this, but and experienced the pain, that businesses were evolving through this digital transformation surge, that the data would be in better shape, that the data would be easy to access, that management teams were using data, customer and competitor data to make ground-up decisions on their strategy and their execution, that management accounts were accurate and not always being revised, or there were errors in it. And actually, it turns out to be not the case, that there is still a challenge on financial accuracy in management accounts in board packs. There is still the challenge of getting access to customer insight and data. And that I think took us a time to get used to that. So one of the biggest challenges is when we talk about value creation, you've got to measure the right things to see whether the key initiatives and the projects that you're driving for future value are going to turn into something. And that something is outcomes, it's measures. And that is a challenge that requires an awful lot of detail and rigor that the sort of management teams sometimes sort of fall at that hurdle because it's actually quite a heavy lift. A lot of the data driven into boards is financial, which is great. You're never going to get move away from that, given who you've got sitting on your board. But actually, it's only one dimension, and often it's looking backwards. Customer health data, where you're trying to assess NPS score, churn, operational excellence. You're trying to assess average contract value, profitability by project or customer, and understand the wants and needs of that customer base that's constantly evolving, as is the competition, is another lens. And actually that is much more forward looking. If your churn is going in the wrong direction or your NPS score is going down, you'll see that flashing red before you'll see it in the finance numbers. And many boards don't have that depth and rigor in their customer-centric data, in their sales data, as they do in their finance data. Likewise, employee data, with the cost of replacing either blue-collar labour or white-collar labour, whichever type it is, it's expensive. And if you don't have the right metrics to track employee health, ENPS, pulse surveys, tenure, attrition, absenteeism, if you're not measuring those things, and again, if those are going in the wrong direction, they will flash red before you see it in finance costs, whether that's more recruiting, that's more interim costs, which is expensive, or whatever the costs are of poor employee health. So those two metrics, those two lenses are often not focused on. And then operational health, likewise, whatever the business is, whether it's a professional services business that's looking at utilization, or it's a SaaS business that's looking at SLAs and performance and uptime and releases. If you don't measure operational health, you have no sense of whether there are, or product health or tech health, of whether the business is going to flourish in the long run. So we've been banging the drum that actually getting these lenses correct is really important for assessing the health of the business now and in the next 3 to 6 months, and then how you are delivering on your value creation plan. And that is something that, again, we've been surprised by, but it's the forensic and detailed nature of that. It's that classic balance scorecard, which I think is that concept has existed for years, but actually it's coming back into focus. And it is that classic statement of what gets measured gets done. And if you're not measuring it and you're not on it as a team on a regular basis, how do you know what you're doing is right to drive value creation? So all of that, going back to your question, comes back from data. And are you measuring the right things? Are you capturing the right data? Are your systems fit for purpose to be able to measure it? So this thirst for data is ever thus, but our mission is to make sure you're capturing the right data and measuring it on a regular basis in an easy fashion. Go back to board packs, having to take stuff out of Excel spreadsheets and paste it into PowerPoint, or then change it and then recut it and then do the graph again and then paste it back into PowerPoint, or put it into Power BI and then take it out and put it back into a board pack, into a PDF. As much as people do in theory like to look at live data, non-execs love PDFs. They love, still, a number of them still like printing them out and scribbling on them. So you're always going to have this challenge of how do you create a board pack that's data driven, that's up to date, that's easy to produce. So a lot of it comes back to this data challenge. And then our mission is to take that data and represent it beautifully, elegantly, impactfully, so that your KPIs, your dashboards, I have this concept of an elevator dashboard that, we as investors and non-execs and board members and management teams, we don't have a lot of time. So this concept of an elevator dashboard, if you've got 30 seconds as if you're in a lift, you want to look at a 3x3 set of KPIs and see immediately what the problem is. And if there's a lot of red and amber and you're feeling queasy when you look at it, you think, right, we got to hone in on that. If there's a lot of green, you're better. So we want to not only capture the right data, but represent it elegantly. Also show trends and charts that are meaningful, because ultimately a KPI can be green, but if its trend is hurtling down, you can't be happy. So you've got to look at the metric, the color, the trend, the volatility. And our mission is to pull that together and seamlessly in a platform, present the data in less pages, but actually through a scan of charts and tables and KPIs, you get an overall picture of all of those lenses of corporate health, not just the finance one. And that then drives a issues-driven agenda, not turning the pages of an 80-page board pack, which often happens. So getting the data, understanding it, representing it beautifully, elegantly, and then driving insight off it, and then what are you going to do about it, such that it's action-oriented? Because many boards, often the actions get lost. And one of my favorite phrases is a board meeting, or any meeting without actions, is just group therapy. Nothing wrong with group therapy. But when you have somebody else's capital sitting on your board, you have to be action-oriented. You have to drive a call to action. So our ultimate is capture the actions as you go in our platform, and that becomes the minutes, and then your actions know where you live. So Harry Turner, you've got 2 to 3 actions from coming out of a board meeting. I'm going to hunt you down, or our platform is going to tap you on the shoulder in 2 weeks' time and say, have you done them? And can you give us a quick update on where you are on those? So that this ultimately is a call to action to turn a discussion and into holding people at the board to account.
Obviously, very convincing pitch in terms of the sort of value creation. But what are the potential blockers that you see in terms of growing your own practice?
The data is one. 2, when we set this up, the elegance of the output is one thing. The ease of turning the data into elegant output is another. And we wanted to sort of say, right, there's your platform, go for your life. I think what we've learned is that there's an element of advisory work that has to go alongside it. You have to sit down with management teams and facilitate. Okay, as a group, as a leadership team, tell me about corporate health. What tells you your customer base is healthy? What tells you your sales pipeline is healthy? What metrics? Likewise, operational, likewise, employee, etc., etc. Because it's an advisory piece, and management needs that focus, that structure, that facilitation exercise. So that's one of the things that I think we've changed our focus for. Yes, we want to produce an easily configurable standard out-of-the-box template so that you can produce your board pack. But actually, the generation of the KPIs is an advisory piece that we probably always do, as is the creation of the value creation plan, because you can look at performance against a budget in year as one thing. That's what we call the day job. That's running the business. But ultimately, if in a PE-backed sense, if you are going to drive alpha style returns for PE, 2.5, 3 times return in a 5 or 6 year period, you're going to have to transform the business. And the business on exit will look dramatically different than it did 5 years ago. And that's largely around organic or inorganic sales growth. It's going to be sales-led profit growth. And it normally is at least doubling of revenue and EBITDA in that time frame. Well, to do that and to transform the business, it's not just running the business, flying the plane. You've got to build the plane for future scale. So the night job, and it's never night job, day job in that, but we use that to, the night job is the projects, the key initiatives. It's the CRM system that you've got to do. It is the recruiting the sales team and building a sales engine and improving on your sales disciplines, your ideal customer profile. It's a voice of the customer program. It might be a AI-driven improve the efficiency of our operations, whatever it is. It is a small number of key initiatives. Well, those key initiatives, the night job, need to be crafted in a value creation plan and then monitored by the leadership team and then reported in an accountable way to the board. Well, that takes time. And again, management, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that management needs help with that, because the next journey up the mountain, a lot of management teams haven't done. So they don't necessarily know what it takes to double sales-led profit growth. They've got it in their head. They know the numbers, but the how, whether that's more from existing customers, new customers, product release, price, operational excellence, brand, whatever it is, that needs putting into a plan and prioritizing, because management teams are all going to be stretched. And therefore, there is a risk to value creation delivery that there are too many initiatives and you don't have that focus. So we are experts in that. And therefore, running alongside the delivery of the board pack is the crafting of the plan and then getting that into the board pack to monitor progress. Day job, report on performance versus budget using KPIs, charts and tables. Night job, report on key initiatives. How are you tracking on those initiatives that you need to get done to drive future growth?
I mean, it's quite a root and branch kind of process. By the end of it, you need to be pretty deeply embedded within the business for this to really take hold. And I guess longer term, if you want to also see it through from implementation rather than just come up with some interesting data and sort of leave them with it, what is then the structure of kind of the contracts and the nature of the engagements that you have with clients?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And actually, one of the things that we don't like to do is outstay our welcome, because we could hang around and support on the delivery of the value creation plan, and we can do that. But actually, we want to drive self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency, the consulting is one thing. Self-sufficiency comes from management adopting good practice, but can often be facilitated using tech. So ultimately, we want the shape of a value creation plan can be represented on what we call a plan on a page, which is where are you now and where do you need to get to by your next liquidity event, whether that's a Series A, Series B, or an exit to a second round of PE or an exit to trade over a 3 to 4, 5 year period. And that is represented in the platform, and each of the key elements of that, which are the metrics you're measuring and the initiatives that you're phasing, you can report in the platform, such that all the initiatives in play, the sponsors at the board have a very quick update. Where are we on this initiative that I'm sponsoring? These are the steps that I've outlined that we need to do. this is what I said I'd do this month on this initiative. This is what's happened. And this is what I'm going to do next month that I'm going to be held to account on. And in the platform, that all rolls forward, so I don't have to repeat myself. And this is the status. Is my key initiative, is my project green on track, amber slightly behind, or red a long way behind? And once you've got that should take, depending on the size and complexity of the initiative, not very long, 15 minutes, maybe half an hour an update. And then the board, if it's flashing red, acts as well, what do we do about that initiative to get it back on track? And there are only few things the board can do to remove those roadblocks. More resource, rescope, reprioritization, drive a greater focus, whatever it is. So ultimately, what we want to do, Harry, is get the value creation plan crafted. We help the management team do that. Through the platform, drives program management discipline so that there is a monthly update, and then the board can review that. Well, that can be quite self-sufficient, and they don't need us to come back and say, right, how are you doing? Or they don't need some ongoing support, because actually they can drive it through the tech. So that therefore means we don't need to have a big band of a team within Arahi supporting on an ongoing basis with management teams. A, because that's heavy on expertise from us, and B, management probably doesn't want to pay for that. And actually, C, it should be able to deliver it and be self-sufficient anyway. So the way we will scale is through the platform. We'll have a core team that will do this value creation planning, board reporting, guidance, and then we'll scale by channel partners. And those channel partners can be consultants who might listen to this and say, well, I fancy doing a bit of that. Well, they could adopt the Arahi methodology. They could have an arrangement with us. If the clients that they operate apply the methodology, get them in the platform, and they can be part of the Arahi community. It might be other consulting houses. It might be accounting firms who want to provide some ongoing support to their clients. A whole range of different change agents will be a community that we'll build over time. Ultimately, everybody goes onto the platform, and this drives different boardroom habits.
So I was going to ask the honourable focus about setting people up for success and not hanging around. The flip side of that means you've got to then increase your customer base significantly over time. So that's an interesting sort of look into.
Well, I'll add one thing to that, because if you go to Peter Thiel's "How do you create a natural monopoly?" Well, you try to drive economy of scales. You try to build a brand. Ultimately, it's about, can you build your product, particularly tech, that's 10 times better than anybody else's? Well, we're on a mission to do that through elegance and ease of use and our data model. But then you need a network effect. And this is why we've chosen private equity. One of the real benefits of VC, private equity, family office, private capital, is if you're sitting on a board, let's say you're chairing a business, and I facilitate a value creation plan with your management team. You like that. You like what's happened in the board pack. You say, John, I've got another company over here. I'd love you to come and do it. Number one. Let's say you're a non-exec investor sitting on the board, and the chief exec has brought us in to do this. So you don't know us. You like the process. You say, John, I sit on 3 other boards. Come and do it with us. And I'm really interested in your portfolio reporting piece. Can you come and have a conversation with my portfolio reporting team? Because we don't think we're getting the best out of the data we're generating from our portfolio. Or we go to a P house and put the portfolio reporting in, and they say, oh, that's quite interesting. Can you help us with the board pack? So we have this network effect once this platform gets up to scale, and we've just started to see this now. We've had a referral from a managing partner of a firm that we've just started doing their portfolio reporting, talking to another PE, said, you need to talk to Arahi. So actually, this network effect is the other thing of how we'll drive this.
Putting you on the spot, being a data-driven and strategy man, with all of that in mind, what are the sort of plans specifically for where you want to be this time next year?
Um, yeah, it's a good question. We're hiring more. We've got a small team. We're hiring more graduates in. We're taking grads. Um, we firmly believe that. I mean, we're a training culture business. I spend a lot of the time either in workshops applying value creation or training it. I train investors through the BVCA. I train CEOs through a community called Pep Talks, which is a peer-to-peer community backed by private equity. So training is in our DNA. We firmly believe we can recruit a small number of grads who can also give us leverage on this in the platform, in the helping do the heavy lifting alongside one or two of us who are the experts facilitating. So we're gonna build our advisory base out, not massively. Continue to train management and PE on value creation, number one. Continue to advise and help shape value creation plans with management teams, and then we're starting this active campaign on our platform: A, portfolio reporting, and B, board reporting. So roll forward 12 months, we'll have a bigger advisory team, not massive. We'll have, our goal is for every value creation plan that we produce, will help shape with management. We facilitate straight into the platform for monitoring and reporting, and then board reporting. So we're just going to drive that more and more, and that hopefully through that network effect, we'll do more board reporting and portfolio reporting. So that is the aim next year. Is we're probably at the point where we can start. Well, in January we are starting going actively out on portfolio reporting to PE houses and board reporting to management team.
Brilliant. Very exciting times, and I'd urge
Yeah,
anybody
yeah,
who can benefit. And I think it's a wide range of businesses, and as you say, on both sides of it, management teams and PE to reach out. But looking forward to hopefully catching up this time next year and seeing how all of that has
yeah.
progressed.
You can hold me to account. See if I am my KPIs, Harry. I've got to walk the talk, haven't I?
Exactly. We've got 12 months to do it, so we're okay. Thanks very much for your time, John. It's been great having you on.
I love talking to you, Harry. Thanks very much.